1776, Adam Smith published an inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of nations, posing the question, what causes one nation to be more wealthy than another? Almost 250 years later, the 2024 Nobel Prize in Economics was awarded to the people who were finally able to answer this question. We live in a time where we have more access to information than ever before, and we are actively creating analytical tools to help us not only better know how things are happening, but more importantly, why things are happening. I collect a ton of data when it comes to video games. What games are people playing? Is a flavor becoming more popular or less popular? Is there a pattern to the kinds of titles that keep getting banned? Now, I am not smart enough to tell you why something is happening, but I can tell you what seems to be more likely given the data. There are no guarantees in life, and a video game can do everything right and still fail, while another video game can do everything wrong and make millions. So today we're going to talk about some of the things that developers do that are more likely to result in a less commercially successful release. That doesn't mean the game is bad, just that if things were a little bit different in a specific way, then the game is, statistically, more likely to be more commercially successful.
So what does cause one nation to be more wealthy than another?
Well, so basically it has to do with how much the people in a society trust the institutions of the society. And I mean, I know that may sound like a duh answer, but there are so many explanations that sound good or that seem like they make sense that have no bearing on reality in any way. So being able to prove a causal relationship and show how that causal relationship works is what makes progress happen. I mean, without it, we don't have medicine, we don't have skyscrapers, we don't have a future. We'd just be stuck in huts fearing the wrath of our thunder gods.
All right.
Which there are a lot of.
Yes, I saw you looking at the list.
Yeah, no.
You were like, I had no idea there were this many thunder gods.
Well, I knew the basics, but I didn't know like everybody had a thunder god.
Well, because it's weather. It's a shared.
No,
thing.
Yeah, I know.
Especially, I guess,
sense.
when you're stuck in your huts.
Exactly.
So, what does this have to do with adult content games?
Well, so the internet is an amazing place to get information, but a lot of that information is incomplete or used in a way to mislead. And I want to be able to help provide developers some hopefully useful information.
Yeah, I want to give them bad information.
I want to give them good information so that they can use it to have a more successful release. And, that way we can have better quality games, get more attention, which leads to better quality games getting made. This can be a win for everybody.
All right, so where are we starting with this?
So I have been looking at Steam and Patreon releases over the past 5 years, and I have noticed many differences between the best performing and the not so best performing games. And I have broken it down to most of those differences into 4 sections.
And you've factored out you're going to have harem games perform better than yaoi games.
Yeah.
But within those classifications, you've kind of controlled for that?
Yeah. And I've kind of narrowed it down to just 4 things. Okay. So 1, when you release your game on Steam matters. Mm-hmm. 2, DLCs are bad. 3, flavor matters more than anything else. And 4, communication is key.
Okay. You can expound on those things?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to start with those 4, and then we're going to just talk about each one of them.
Okay.
And, it's not just about success and failure. Being a Dick Season 1, it was my 2020 Game of the Year, and it was massively successful. Mm-hmm. But then Being a Dick Season 2 still made a ton of money, but it was still a fraction of what Season 1 made. And, would Season 2 have done better if it wasn't a DLC?
So if it was like a regular release?
Yeah, if it was a standalone game. I have no idea, but if you look at review scores and player engagement and overall sales numbers, DLCs tend to massively underperform versus standalone sequels.
You were talking to me before about your idea of player engagement. So you're looking at concurrent players, mm-hmm. You're looking at review scores, you're looking at basically everything that you use to do Game of the Year, you just have started calling that player engagement.
Yeah, because it categorizes all of them into just one thing, and so that's just easier to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know you started the list with when you release the games, but it seems like we're talking about DLC is bad. So are we going out of order?
Well, okay, so I want to do it by game because each game has things they do well and then things that they can improve upon. But Being a Dick does a fantastic job giving many players the flavor combination that they really enjoy. And the developer, Dr. Pancake, actually does an amazing job talking to their community on Patreon. So even if a game may take longer than what people expect.
That's kind of the standard Patreon system.
Well, but a developer communicating with the community and being open about the ongoing process seems to be a very common factor in the most successful games.
Okay.
So, I mean, you think of Summertime Saga. That game went like 2 years without a release. But the developer, I was going to say Dr. Cookie.
Dr. Cookie, Dr. Pink Cookie.
Dark Cookie. He kept doing like live streams, creating art, and, many other forms of communicating with their audience. So he did a really good job with that. But like I said, none of these things are a guarantee, but they will likely increase your chances if you are a developer.
Okay.
And honestly, another game that struggled with DLC was Fetish Locator.
The game you get in trouble for just like saying on YouTube.
Yeah, I know. I think we're deep enough
Okay,
into the video that I could bring it up.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But so the weeks were standalone games.
So I guess every game calls it something different. A book, a season, they called it weeks.
Yeah, they called it weeks. So they had 3 weeks, and each week was a standalone game. And then many of the endings were packaged as DLC, and some of those were actually behind a paywall.
Oh, which is interesting.
Yeah, so, I mean, I get that making a video game, is expensive, and that a developer has the right to charge as much as they want and in whatever format they want. However, we as consumers have the right to say we think something is a poor decision, and a developer is going to make a lot less money if people just don't buy their product.
So selling it for money causes less copies in general to be sold.
Yeah.
Pisses people off, lowers the score.
Yeah, and then everyone goes, and I saw this happen with Fetish Locator. Everyone went to the previous weeks and then review bombed it. And so they're all like at mixed, except maybe like the first one.
It's not just the DLCs that were impacted, it was the
entire franchise. Which is unfortunate because this game is another example of a fantastic combination of flavors. It's also one of the rare examples of successfully providing a huge diversity of choice for players. You literally have a buffet of flavors to pick and choose from with a story that is still mostly makes sense.
I remember you were talking about the different endings and how there was a lot more cohesion in some of the narratives than with others.
Yes, yeah.
But I guess when you have that many outcomes, you're bound to have better and worse outcomes.
Yeah.
And that does seem to be an issue when you offer a lot of flavors. The flavors that you offer and the ways that you offer them, that is invariably going to cause kind of forking in the stories. At least this finished because especially the games that like offer like a harem plot line and an NTR plot line, they seem to get so bogged down because they go in such different directions and they don't seem to finish. So
yeah.
What was the sci-fi game that you really liked that finished recently?
Oh, City of Broken Dreamers. Yeah, their book 2 just came out. But it was a DLC, and it came out in November, which is like one of the worst months to release an adult content game. I mean, August is probably the absolute worst month, but November is really bad too.
So I guess are we moving to your first point?
Yeah, my first point. What was the first point? What months?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there are some good months. So when should you release a game on Steam?
Well, so I can't tell you about mainstream games, but for adult content titles, there are definitely times you should not release your game. So January through June tends to be the best time, and then it starts to drop through the summer. and pick up a little bit in the fall, but every month in the second half of the year is worse than the first half, except in December. December's a bit weird. The first half of December is really bad, but like the last week tends to be really, really good. So if you are going to release a game in December, aim for it to release at or after Christmas.
And I know you said you're not going to tell why, but are we allowed to speculate a little?
Oh, okay. So, well, like I said, I mean, I'm not smart enough to tell you why.
Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer.
Yeah. I mean, we probably need like an economist to figure it out for sure, but there are probably a few factors at work. So there are many more mainstream games that release in the fall, and that means more competition for adult games. Holiday shopping has a major impact about how we spend our money in November and most of December. And I'm pretty sure that adult games aren't ranking high as Christmas gifts for other people.
I can't imagine why.
I mean, yeah, it would be great if we lived in a world where people could be, more open about their gaming. But given the importance of flavors in an adult content game, do you really want to know your family and friends well enough to know what adult content games they're going to really enjoy? I mean, I'm not trying to shame here, but I think there is such a thing as healthy boundaries. And this may be a little bit too far.
It would make it for an interesting, Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it would. But I do think that Fresh Women Season 2, they actually were just delayed from December. They were going to release in December, and they pushed it back to next year. And I think that was a smart move. I mean, nobody wants to see a delay, of course, but there were a lot of really good games that came out in November that just got killed.
Yeah, I remember the Love of Magic game had a new guy.
Yeah,
Morningstar.
Yeah, Morningstar. Yeah, that was the same developer as Love of Magic, and I thought it felt very much like Persona for adults, and the music was just fantastic. But I am worried that it came out at the absolute worst time, given how bad November is in general, plus how many strong adult content games came out in this specific November.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I hate to see something as popular as Fresh Women struggle in the same way. So, like I said, it's probably the best that it was delayed. But, unfortunately, Fresh Women Season 2 is also a DLC. So, hopefully, this title will not suffer the same fate as Being a Dick Season 2.
Yeah. Being a Dick made so much money, though. That
it did.
I mean, we're talking about, it's hard to feel bad. It's like, one less yacht to buy.
Did he make enough to buy a yacht?
A small yacht.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
I don't know the prices of yachts.
Not a mega yacht.
Okay.
What? You don't know the yachting market? Come on, Annie. Seriously, where's your research?
I'm sorry, I did all the research, but yachts.
Yachts. You get a yacht, you'll get a cat, you'll give it a little captain's hat.
Oh, that's cute.
And you don't like to leave the house anyway. You can just sail your house around.
Like a mobile home.
You like the rain.
Uh-huh.
So.
Oh my gosh, yeah, but I would not want to be in a boat like during a storm. Like that sounds so dangerous.
That's why you have the cat with the captain's hat.
Oh,
he's
gonna take care of everything.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Good. But while we're on the subject of this developer,
being a dick.
No. Obi-Man.
Okay, Obi-Man.
Yeah,
Fresh
Obi-Man.
Women.
Yeah, Fresh Women. Forbidden Fantasy just released, and it's very clear that this game is doing much, much, much less well than Fresh Women.
That's 3 muches.
That's 3 muches, yeah. It's a lot of muches. Fresh Women Season 1 did amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the factors I mentioned earlier is that communication is key. And right before the release of Forbidden Fantasy, the developer posted on Steam, and he said, Forbidden Fantasy can have 3 possible outcomes. 1, become a top seller adult game. In this case, we'll start developing Forbidden Fantasy 2 as a longer game as soon as possible, and also hire more people to start developing new franchises. 2, a small success. In this case, I'll have to carefully evaluate the expected number of sales in the case we make Forbidden Fantasy 2. It's a harder decision for me. And 3, sales failure. There won't be a Forbidden Fantasy 2,
Jesus.
and the team will move on to a new project.
Before he released the game?
Right before he released the game. And if you're trying to sell a game and you give the 3 outcomes where only one of them have you committing to continuing the game that ends on a cliffhanger right before you want people to buy your game.
So he didn't say for sure that he wouldn't do the second one. He was like, maybe in the second one.
He's just... I mean, I guess I appreciate the honesty, but it's not going to look good. and I mean, what about all the patrons who were like funding this game with an expectation of like continued development?
Because you said this was the top new Patreon of this year.
Yeah. So like I said, communication is important, and that includes what you are actually communicating. Fortunately, they did eventually confirm continued development a week later. And
they kept people in suspense
for a week. But it was just so unnecessary.
So let's be fair, okay? I get what you're saying, and the difficulty is if these are all, even the most successful ones, they're all starting as indie developers. So that's a lot of hats to wear.
Yeah.
You are the artist behind the game, you are the coder behind the game, you are the marketing of the game, you are, the PR of the game. So I understand what you're saying, and the whole reason that you're putting together this podcast is to help developers. And so I don't think this is going to be one of those highly watched podcasts. Like the MasterCard podcast, that surprisingly did well because people felt interested. I don't know how many just regular gamers are going to care about the things that developers can do better to get their game out more.
Well, I mean, I'm just hoping developers watch this.
They do.
I know.
So I do see what you're trying to do, and I'm worried that people are going to think you're coming off too harsh, and you are. I don't mean to sound, you're coming from a place of love on this.
I am, because I want these games to do well.
And I know this started as you were going to talk about all of the things that went wrong with Subverse.
Yeah.
But then all of these other major games came out, and all of these other things came out, and I know you did like a deep dive on when is the best time to release a game. You looked at like the top 240 games or some insane number of games.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And then you looked at when they were released and the player engagement and all that other stuff. And that all came from and I've seen this happen before. You have a plan, you're going to do a video, and then you start collecting a whole bunch more data, and it kind of evolves and takes on a mind of its
else.
own.
Yeah. That's definitely what happens with this
all
one.
Right. So speaking of Subverse.
Yeah, Subverse absolutely had the most unnecessary comment by a developer that led to like the greatest financial damage we've ever seen in an adult content game.
That was the stuff about Chinese localization from late 2021.
Yes.
You're gonna?
Yes,
okay.
I found it.
Well,
because
I remember you raged about it when it happened at the time, and I'm gonna loop everybody in real quick.
Okay, a recap.
Subverse came out in end of February of 2021. The early access did amazing. There were some concerns through the summer. People were giving feedback. There was responsiveness to the feedback. And then, like October, November.
November.
They basically stepped on the biggest rake in the world, and it just smacked them in the face. And the review score has never recovered.
No, yep. It was mostly positive, and now it is mixed, and it has sat at mixed since that incident, and it has not changed.
So you're going to walk us through this?
Yeah. So in a now deleted developer post on Steam from November of 2021, they had a lot to say about Chinese localization, and since it's deleted, I thought I was going to read the whole thing.
And this isn't something that's going to get you canceled. I mean, how bad is this?
Okay, it's bad, but I think just by reading it and maybe giving a little bit of my opinion, I think I'll be fine if I get canceled from this.
I'm very concerned.
I mean, it's not my words.
Yeah, but you know how this goes.
I know. Okay. So, They start off with, I'm writing today to genuinely express to all of our dear Chinese users, you are very, very important to us. We want to make all of you happy. Just hold on. As there is still an ongoing dialogue between users regarding the Chinese localization, we feel it is important to clarify further this topic. Hopefully, this post will create a consensus, or at least provide more understanding of where we are with Chinese localization. So, this is a great start, and if we had ended the post here, we'd all be living in a world with a very different Subverse. Unfortunately, we're living in the cursed timeline where Harambe was assassinated.
Okay, Zoomer.
Whatever. It was a sad time, and it changed history.
Okay.
Anyways, continuing their ill-fated post, in order to explain the situation, I would like to highlight some recent feedback posts that show the different perspectives of this debate. And then they quote a person, as long as it comes to the Republic of China and not the PRC, mainland China has a strict policy even on exposing skin, not to mention nudity and porn in games. So, as long as it's traditional Chinese, it's okay to spend resources on. My advice to, I'm going to interject, my advice to developers is to not quote people in a way that drags into a conversation comparing and contrasting Taiwan and mainland China.
Because they get along so well.
Yeah, and for God's sake, do not give your opinion on the subject, as we're about to see. This leads to the legality of the subject. Since adult content
You're reading it.
Yes,
okay.
I'm quoting here.
All right.
Since adult content is illegal in mainland China, our approach with regards to localization
Jesus Christ.
isn't just bear with me.
Oh my God.
With regards to localization is in line with what the person that they just quoted says. We identified that since the adult content is illegal in mainland China, and we should and must do the localization in traditional Chinese, at least in step 1 and until adult content is not prohibited in mainland China.
What?
Just listen.
It sounds like they're... Okay, all right, I'm sorry.
I know.
You're right.
No, I know.
Right.
I just gotta get...
Okay.
I just gotta get through it. We hear your requests of we need Chinese loud and clear, but dear mainland China users, please understand, since adult content is illegal in your country, we ask you that you let us handle this the way that we feel is the most optimal for Subverse and does not expose us and the whole project into trouble. The last thing any of us want to do is to accidentally English.
No, we're talking about Mandarin.
The last thing any of us want is to accidentally jeopardize the entire project with a misguided localization attempt, meaning that no Chinese users get the game. We are going to be careful to ensure that users from all Chinese territories have methods of playing the game. The current political landscape of mainland China, where adult content is illegal, is difficult to navigate. We must handle your requests carefully and in a way that does not breach any law of the PRC.
What do they think they're doing?
I don't know.
You release the game. You release the game in any number of languages that you want.
Mm-hmm.
You're not putting physical copies anywhere.
Yeah.
People are on the internet. God knows how many people are using VPNs from wherever else.
Exactly.
The market is different than the country, even if it's where the market is coming from.
Yeah.
Those are two completely different things.
Yeah, and do they know how many adult content games use both traditional and simplified Chinese? Fresh Women is available in both. And last year's Game of the Year, Village Rhapsody, not only offers both, but it was made by ethically Chinese developers. So, just not to mention all the Chinese language development studios out of Taiwan like Mango Party. They release games in both traditional and simplified Chinese.
Weren't they? You were saying they were at the Tokyo Game Show this year.
Yeah, they were. Yeah. It was so nice to see. I was like, oh, I know those. I was like, all these mainstream games. I'm just like, oh, I don't know these.
Forget that nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, if this was really the case, why would Subverse be translated into Russian or German?
Oh, please don't go into that.
Those countries also have laws and restrictions on games like Subverse.
Okay, good. Don't talk about other things.
Yeah, that's all
Yeah.
I wanted to say. I mean, I gotta be honest. I'm not sure that I'm comfortable continuing with what they said. It's just so unnecessary, and it has nothing to do with video games.
I think that, there are always going to be politics in any art that's created, and that's their right to be political or to talk about politics or to put politics in their game. But it does definitely it can strengthen the appeal to a certain market. But generally, the more controversial you are, the smaller your market's going to be. And I do get the point where, none of these games are allowed in Germany, so why would you put it in German? I don't know if they had plans to put Subverse in German, but I know they do have plans to put Subverse in Russian. And you're right.
Well, I think they also said something about European countries.
Well, yeah, but it was very vague.
It was very vague.
And nobody was talking about the illegality or anything of that.
Nope.
It does feel like they're treating these European countries and these Asian countries differently.
Yes.
And that could be, just as
like an outside perspective.
And, I'm not saying anything beyond that, but it does, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. How bad does this get? I guess we can always edit it out. All right. So,
yeah, I guess we could.
Okay.
So, yeah. All right. So I'll finish it. I'll finish it. There's not that much left.
Okay.
Okay. So they start with quoting another person. I'm not going to say their names.
Okay.
So they say, go check the data. How much percent of donation and pre-order are contributed by Chinese? Then you won't talk like this. Also, they know in which market sells better, more than you do. LOL.
Okay, I know that Studio Faux.
I think it's Faux.
Okay,
yeah,
sorry, my
Faux.
bad. I know that Studio Faux had a very strong support from Asia. So, and it's hard to tell. Like you use a VPN. This is not a VPN commercial. You use a VPN.
Oh yeah.
You live in Asia. Well, we live in Asia. We all live in Asia. So where you show up as, where you might exist as, is going to show different than where you actually are. And for a lot of places all over the world, but especially in Asia, that is very common. So I think this person is saying there are a lot of Chinese language speaking supporters, and they want to be acknowledged. They want to be heard. And if they just said, yeah, we're going to get this in simplified in traditional 3 years ago, how much more money would Subverse have earned keeping a mostly positive score opposed? How much time and attention do you think Subverse has had to spend distracted by? And I don't want to mean distracted by in a bad way, but focusing resources on trying to dig out of this hole that they're making for themselves.
Yeah, and they're still in.
Well. All right, so let's hear about this kid.
Okay, they say, regarding the person that I just said, remark.
The person who was taking a pro-Chinese language, they're saying, hey, there are a lot of Chinese language fans, and they respond to this.
Yeah, so regarding their remark, it's actually not so clear from where the traffic and Chinese users are coming.
God.
Yeah.
Do they know how many? Okay.
Yeah.
And so this was 2021. Maybe they didn't realize how many Chinese gamers there were on Steam.
I guess.
Because it's a crazy number now.
Yeah.
But okay, all right.
Maybe it was less in 2021. I don't know.
I don't. I think we're giving a way benefit of the doubt here.
I think we are. Yeah. Okay. So continuing, it is important to state that we 100% acknowledge that there are lots of Chinese users, and we are, of course, massively grateful for their support.
I don't feel like they're massively grateful
I don't
for their support.
Yeah.
Where's the butt?
Yeah. However, there it is. Where the base of our Chinese users actually are coming from is quite important in terms of the localization approach. Based on these statistics and data we have available, we can see that Chinese users are not coming from the PRC. In fact,
oh my God. Okay. All right.
In fact, zero traffic is coming from the PRC, mainland China. That is not a surprise, as adult content is illegal in the PRC.
Why are they harping on this?
I don't know.
These games are illegal on most of the planet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Continuing. We can see some traffic from Hong Kong and Taiwan. Based on the traffic data, it seems to us that most non-English speaking Chinese users purchase the game from Hong Kong and Taiwan. Please understand that since we cannot...
So they're ignoring Malaysia and Singapore, which both speak... Okay, all right.
Both speak simplified Chinese,
all right. Okay,
yeah.
whatever.
Okay, continuing. Please understand that since we cannot market the software in mainland China...
You're not marketing the software in mainland... You are putting it on Steam with different language choices.
Yeah.
Does everybody who speaks Russian only live in Russia?
No.
Does that... Okay. All right.
Yeah,
All right.
I know.
Sorry. My bad.
Yeah.
I'll just
yeah.
unrustle my jimmies.
Okay. Continuing. We cannot sell the game in mainland China, and we cannot do the localization in simplified Chinese. Moreover, since this is a complex and massive development task, this cannot be the absolute priority for the project. Please be patient and allow us the time necessary to work on the English content of the game, and gradually we will be able to fulfill your request to play Subverse in Chinese. We would like to ask, this is the funny part, we would like to ask you all who are waiting for the Chinese localization to please support us by upvoting the game. the audacity.
Because they just said you're not getting it in simplified, but please be positive about our game anyway.
Please support us by upvoting the game. A more popular game has a better chance to acquire the necessary resources and connections needed to create localizations quicker and with better quality. Like... It just, like I said, the audacity. I just don't understand why they had to make this such a weird thing.
Yeah.
Like,
where 3 paragraphs. Because here's the thing. As of right now, Subverse is still only available in English.
Yeah.
And they could have been like, look, it's on our list. We're going to do it. We're committed to it. But this is, this huge thing. We're hiring all these voice actors. We're doing all this stuff. And we are so committed to it. You're not talking about what's illegal where. You're not talking what's allowed where. Mm-hmm. You're not, when Subverse had trouble getting into Germany, they didn't blame German fans. They didn't.
Yeah.
And it's just so... It's weird.
It's weird. Like, isn't the story, the plot line of Subverse about the censorship?
Yeah, but okay, all right. But we're all a little bit hypocritical when it comes to... That's part of being in a society.
I know.
There are things we do not agree with that we conform with because that's just part of being an adult and living in the world. So there's always going to be some baseline of, hypocrisy.
Yeah,
so,
It's just so tone deaf for like an American or European developer to step into a very complex situation like this.
That sounds good, but we're both Americans, so let's,
Okay, that's true.
Our American family. Oh yes, let me tell you how wrong you are. It's like, oh okay, oh yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
I think, reminds me of, I remember when Witcher 3 came out and it did really well, and journalists in the U.S., people from the U.S., were like, this game needs more representation.
Oh, yeah.
And CD Projekt Red was like, do you know anything about Poland? Do you know anything about this story?
Yeah, medieval Poland.
and yeah, it just, and without getting political or anything, that's a whole can of worms and everything else. And
you know what's in Witcher 3?
What is in Witcher 3?
Chinese language localization, in both simplified and traditional. So, just...
All right. I started this thing with talking about you're coming from a place of love. That was pretty harsh, dude.
Look, I'm not trying to pick on Subverse.
You fooled me.
I really liked a lot about what was going on in the game. Like the space exploration, that was really nice. But of the 4 things a developer should do, Subverse struggled with communication and released in the wrong month. And, I suppose we should talk about flavors.
You've been angry about this for years.
I've been angry about this, since 2021. since it was in early access. If you want to make a heterosexual harem game, make it. You will make a ton of money. If you want to make a more intense corruption monster-focused game, make it. You will make a ton of money. You want to make both? You better actually make it and include all the flavor content necessary to fulfill players' flavor desires and expectations. Otherwise, you're just going to disappoint everyone. So even if that is still probably smarter than pissing off a country with 668 million video game players when you are making a video game.
China has 668 million gamers.
Yeah, I was surprised about that number too.
Jesus.
But I can see that. Yeah.
So I think what you were saying about Fetish Locator earlier, where they actually successfully offered a wide variety of flavors. So where Subverse kind of wanted to be a heterosexual harem where the monsters weren't doing anything.
Yeah, it's like a sprinkle of monsters.
And they also kind of tried to do all monsters, but they didn't really do either one. Well, you said Fetish Locator did kind of threaded that needle.
Yes.
And I mean, but it is easier to do in a visual novel. And I think that's why visual novels are so popular. Because if flavors are the most important thing, which you've been only saying for years, it makes sense that visual novels are just focused on delivering the flavors or the combination of flavors like you're talking about.
The combination. Yeah.
I understand you're trying to help.
Yeah, I mean, someone needs to say it. How about video game developers make their video games and actually understand the ramifications of when you get political?
Let's not get political.
Okay, we won't. I don't like getting political. So, but it is in every creator's right to be political, and I defend their right to it. But it's also every consumer's right to choose how and what they consume. And consumers are going to give a lot of feedback, especially if you piss them off. People are much more likely to give a bad review if they are unhappy than they are likely to give a good review if they are happy.
And that's an everything thing. That's not a video game thing.
Yeah, that's just an everything thing. Yeah. The problem with negative feedback based on flavor issues is that people are much less likely to talk about the flavor issues. So if a game has a bad flavor combination, you may see more people complain about the gameplay or the story. But if people love the flavors, they will likely tolerate the same type of gameplay and story that they would have otherwise complained about.
That makes sense. I mean, I don't think people, when we're angry, when we're upset, we want to tell people they're upset, and we're not always the most rational.
Yeah,
we don't always know why we're upset about something. Yeah. And I want to make sure that we're not, it is a little arrogant on your part to say, hey, I know why they're really upset. But I know, because you were talking to me about this, and you were saying that you looked at positive reviews and you looked at negative reviews, and when the reviews are positive, people are gushing about the flavors and the combination and the love interests, and these are things that you kind of said, these are flavor related. But when people are complaining about a game, they are much less likely to mention flavor. Sometimes people will mention flavor issues, but they're much more likely to talk about mechanical things or story things. So there is a gap in how people talk about the game compared to when they like it and when they don't like it. And that's why you're making this potential conclusion. You're not saying you know better. Please do not be one of these journalists, because you're a journalist. I know you don't want to call yourself. Please don't be one of these journalists who because you're not trying to do that, but you don't want people, I can't believe Annie said this. And the other thing too, it's like when you say you're not political, you are political, okay? You talk about sex in video games.
Yeah, it's hard not to be.
That's innately political.
Yeah.
What you mean is you're not talking about other things, because look, you have many political views that you do not share on the channel because you're focused on...
I'm focused on the channel and what the channel is about. Yeah.
Yeah, and I get it. And one of the complaints that people give is that they identify with you and they want you to take a more strong position politically on other things, which you may actually believe, but you don't talk about here.
Yeah.
And it is interesting, and I know it hurts your feelings sometimes when, because you do, it does. I mean,
a little bit. No game is perfect, but people are mainly playing adult content games for the adult content. So if a developer can do a good job on that, we are more likely to tolerate so many other annoyances. I mean, why else do you think visual novels are so popular? If you enjoyed this episode of Shame Free Gaming, be sure to check out my YouTube channel, my Patreon, and my Discord. Also, all of the games that we talked about can be found on my Patreon, Sex Positive Gaming. And I will see you next time.